What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be continuing my journey through Photon Hypernova with Abyss Actors, but before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also be extremely helpful as they let you know when I post on the channel. So the first of 4 new cards here, and this one is actually a 1-card combo, and the same can be said for the first 3 combos. Then I'll be following those with 6 more combos/test hands that display the direction that you can go with the deck, along with how to play full hand. And to begin, I'm going to start by reading Abyss Actor's Dress Rehearsal, and it reads, at the start of your main phase 1, add 1 Abyss Actor and 1 Abyss Script spell from your deck to your hand. Also, you cannot pendulum summon monsters for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, except Abyss Actor monsters, which is fine because this deck is mostly comprised of Abyss Actor monsters, so you won't need to worry about that, as we're going to add Abyss Actor extras and the second of the 4 new cards, Abyss Script Dramatic Story. And this one reads, target 1 Abyss Actor Pendulum monster you control, special summon 1 Abyss Actor Pendulum monster with a different name from your deck. Then either place the targeted monster in your Pendulum zone or destroy it. If this set card in its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, and you have a face-up Abyss Actor Pendulum monster in your extra deck, you can return up to 2 cards on the field to the hand, and you can only activate 1 Abyss Script Dramatic Story per turn. And I have to mention, this is actually a huge piece of support for Abyss Actors, as along with their new Link monster that I'll go over momentarily, the ability to return cards upon its destruction by your opponent is a major component in making this deck just that much better. So from here, we're going to normal summon the Abyss Actor extras, as this is a going first combo. If our opponent had a monster and we were going second, you can activate it in the Pendulum scale and then use its effect to special summon itself, though that does lock you into Abyss Actors for the rest of the turn. And when playing this deck, the locks are extremely important to keep in mind, which can make this deck kind of nightmarish to learn if you have no idea what you're doing. But we're going to place the Abyss Actor curtain via the extras, and then we're going to use the curtain as we don't have any monsters special summoning it, and then we can use its effect here, which will allow us to send an Abyss Script to the graveyard as we can return the extras to our hand. And from here, we're going to go into our Link 1, place the extras on the scale again, as we're going to use the Link 1's effect, and this will allow us to move the scale to the monster zone, and then place another scale, as we're going to get Wild Hope from our deck. And you'll see how this has amazing synergy with the Link 2 that we go into Super Producer. And it reads that you need 2 monsters, including a Fiend monster. During the main phase quick effect, you can target 1 face-up card you control, destroy it. During the main phase quick effect, you can target 1 face-up card you control, destroy it. Then you can apply one of these effects. Place 1 Abyss Playhouse Fantastic Theater from your deck in your field zone, or place 1 Abyss Actor Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone. And you can only use this effect of Super Producer once per turn. Technically Electromite at home, but it's definitely a performance enhancer for this deck, for obvious reasons, as we're going to use its effect popping the Wild Hope, and this even allows us to trigger the Wild Hope, which will net us a search, as we place the Madam onto the scale. And Madam being scale 0, level 7, along with a searcher, comes up a lot, especially since you can lock yourself pretty early with stuff like extras. So the search effect isn't as hurtful as it may seem, but we're going to use that effect right now, as we're going to add the final new card. And if I'm being honest, the only important thing with this card here is that it is a scale 8. Its Pendulum effect reads, when a monster declares an attack, you can discard 1 card, special summon this card to your opponent's field. You can only use this effect of Liberty Dramatist once per turn. If this card is special summoned summon from the Pendulum Zone, this card's owner reveals 3 Abyss Script spells from their deck. Their opponent randomly picks one of them for this card's owner to set to their field, but it is destroyed during the end phase. Also, the rest are shuffled back into the deck, and if this card is destroyed, you can shuffle 1 Abyss Script spell from your graveyard into the deck. You can only use each effect of Dramatist once per turn. So the synergy that it has with the field spell is kind of cute, in which when your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon this, trigger its effect, and the field spell will change its effect. And of course it also has the ability to shuffle an Abyss Script spell from your graveyard into the deck upon destruction, which, as you see, we have a quick effect Electromite here with the Super Producer. So it's not terrible, it allows you to get a name back, but it's not something that is going to advance your plays, which is why I think the scale 8 is the most important thing that it has going for it, as we're going to place the Dramatist here on the scale, as we're going to Pendulum Summon now, and we're going to Pendulum Summon 3, which will allow us to use the dramatic story and also allow us to trigger the Madame as we special summon the other level 7 here, Superstar, and on a new chain link we'll just use Madame, special summon another level 4, replacing the Abyss Curtain that we put back in the extra deck for the story. And from here we're going to use the Curtain, sending ourselves an Abyss Script. It doesn't matter which one you send, I'm just sending the Opening Ceremony just because, but we're going to now use the effect of the Superstar, which will allow us to set the Abyss-tainment. And this is where things get kind of spicy, as now you can use the Abyss-tainment, tributing your monsters to get your Abyss Script spell cards back. And you'll see that I'm actually going to make a misclick there. I got the Opening Ceremony instead of the Dramatic Story, which would have given you an interruption with the ability to return to. But for this example, this is fine, as you can kind of just see how the cards work, as we're going to normal summon the extras on our opponent's board, use the effect of the Superstar, popping the Hope and getting us the field spell on board, as you only do this depending on what your opponent does. Keep in mind that this is just a simulation rather than an actual game, and what I'm doing from the opponent's board is just to show what our board can do, as the field spell allows us to change our opponent's monster effect into popping one of our set cards. And in this case, we're going to pop the Ceremony, which will allow us to draw until we have 5 cards in our hand. So for those learning the deck, I'm showing the second and third combo so that you can see what the deck does. Also showcases the new cards, which I guess is nice, but onto the combo, I'm going to normal summon the extras, use its effect, which will allow us to get our Curtain Raiser. And when you have one monster that you normal summon and nothing else to really extend, your Link 1 is going to be your go-to play, as we're going to go into that Link 1, place the extras on the scale, then use the Link 1, and this will allow us to bring it out onto the field while getting Hope from our deck to the field, and then we can link away into the mini Electromite here, and we'll use its effect, popping the Hope, as we're going to place the Madame on scale again, as we're going to use the Hope's effect. This will get us the Superstar. We can then use the effect of Madame, which will allow us to search the Liberty Dramatist again, as we're going to place it on scale as the scale 8, and then we'll be able to Pendulum 3 here, as we're going to use the Curtain Raiser, sending the Ceremony again. You can send the Story if you would like here, if you want the interruptions. Take what you see with a grain of salt, as I'm really not trying to cover technical play in this video as much as I am trying to cover how to utilize these cards. So from here I'm going to use the Superstar's effect, which will allow us to place the Abyss-tainment in our field, and then we can activate it, and this will allow us to tribute a couple of monsters here, as we're going to do just that, get ourselves our Abyss Scripts back, and this will essentially allow us to pass to our opponent here, as the Abyss-tainment goes to the graveyard because of Superstar. And again, our opponent does anything, we can use the effect of the Super Producer, which will trigger the Dramatist and also get us the field spell. And the minute that our opponent does anything we can use the field spell as long as it's a monster effect and pop one of our cards here as we're going to do the ceremony again to fill our hand up. For the final 1-card combo, before I start taking the directions you can go with this deck, I want to show a 1-card OTK, and this just needs extras. As you saw, it's basically full combo when going first, but what you're able to do going second with the ability to place it on the scale and special summon it if your opponent has a body on board is pretty relevant. And we're going to use the Curtain Raiser to get back the extras, go into the Link 1, as this is basically the same thing that we've been doing, as we're going to use the Link 1, get us a monster on board through the extras, along with the Hope to our scale, as we're now going to go into Super Producer. Super Producer can then use its effect, popping the Hope, and from here we'll place the Madame on scale, as we'll now trigger the Hope, get ourselves the Superstar, and from here we can use the Madame's effect, as we're going to get ourselves a Search, and this time we're going to get the Comedic, because our opponent has a body on board, and we're going to now Pendulum Summon, as it is a scale 8 and Madame is a scale 0. We'll then use the Abyss Curtain, which will send the Abyss-tainment to the graveyard, and if you haven't noticed already, it's how you get your Abyss Grips back onto your field so that your opponent can pop them through the field spell. But we're going to use the effect of Superstar here now, which will get us the second copy of the Abyss-tainment, and this is actually pretty important. You'll see why momentarily, but we're going to set it back to our field now, and then use the effect again to set the Dramatic Story onto our field, and then we're going to use the Dramatic Story to special summon out a second copy of Comedic here, or Comic, and then from here we're going to destroy the Superstar. We can then use the effect of the Comedic, switch control. Keep in mind, if that was actually an extras, you maybe wouldn't want to switch control, but this is just assuming this is something that you want to steal. So we're going to use the Comic Relief on our opponent's side of the field to pop our Abyss-tainment, which will allow us to get a bunch of special summons here. And this is essentially how you'll get your OTK, as you're going to use the Superstar to get yourself the Rise of the Abyss King here, and then you can just activate it, popping the majority of your opponent's board, or all of it, depending on what they have. And then we're going to trigger off the Madame to get ourselves extra damage on board. With this, you've successfully OTK'd your opponent, and you can also even use the Wild Hope buff the attack. It's also not a hard once per turn. We have 2 Wild Hopes, so that's just extra damage output for every Abyss actor we control. Different names, as long as they're monsters. So now I'm going to showcase a few 2-card combos here using the same 2 cards. We'll be covering the directions you may want to take. So because Dress Rehearsal is like Extravagance and requires you to use it at the start of your main phase 1 in order to actually use it, we're going to do just that as we get ourselves Wild Hope and the Story, and then from here we're going to use the Abyss Curtain Raiser, which we have to do this first because we can't control any monsters when we special summon it. So we'll now normal summon our Hope. We can then use the Dramatic Story, targeting our Hope and special summoning the Superstar. We'll then destroy the Hope here, as that is going to net us a Search, and this will get us a Madame, as we can now use the Abyss Curtain Raiser, sending the Abyss-tainment, getting ourselves back the Hope, and then we can use the Superstar, which will allow us to set the Abyss-tainment from our deck, as we're now going to go into Beyond the Pendulum. Beyond the Pendulum will then net us a Search here, as we get the Liberty Dramatist. We're just getting it for a scale 8. If you're going second, there is lines of play where you can go for Comic Relief instead. But we're going to now scale the Wild Hope and the Dramatist. It's convenient that a lot of your Abyss actors have low scales, but it's also important to know that you don't have any high scales. As we're going to Pendulum Summon now, bring out our Superstar, Curtain Raiser, Madame, and then we can activate the Abyss-tainment, which will allow us to trigger the Madame, and you could also use the Beyond the Pendulum's effect, as these are different levels. That's assuming you're going second, and the Madame is going to bring us out the Wild Hope. Then from here we can go into the Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, as we're going to go into Dagda, special summon out the Vortex from our extra deck. We don't have a negation with it yet, but we're going to use the Wild Hope in order to trigger the Dagda, get us the Scythe face down, and then from here we can link away into the Super Producer. Now that we have Wild Hope in the extra deck, we do have a negation, and we're going to use the effect of the Producer, which will allow us to destroy the Dramatist and allow us to place the Comic Relief onto our extra deck while also getting back the Abyss Tainment in our graveyard back to our deck through the Dramatist. We're going to pass to our opponent on that, as we're going to successfully get the Scythe lock by getting the field spell through the Producer, popping the Wild Hope. We'll also be able to get a search like this. But as soon as our opponent uses a monster effect, and you see I accidentally added Madame instead of the Wild Hope, so I apologize for putting you through that, but we're going to use the Wild Hope now. It will allow us to use the field spell, replacing its effect similar to Durandal, popping the Scythe, potentially ending your opponent's turn. This combo, again, I'll be using the same 2 cards. I want to point out that the combos do vary when you get Curtain Raiser, because there's not many Abyss actors that bring themselves out that don't lock you, and I think Razor might actually be the only one. But you'll see that we're going to follow the same lines of play that we started with before, and those will be the most common route when you open with these 2 cards, as I believe it's also the best route to take. But we're going to use the Abyss Curtain Raiser, sending the Abyss Tainment. We'll then get ourselves back to Hope. We can then use the Superstar, which will allow us to set the flames from our deck as we're going to go into Beyond the Pendulum. We can then net ourselves a search. As we get the Dramatist, we'll then place the Wild Hope and the Dramatist into our scales, and then we'll Pendulum summon the Madame, the Superstar, along with the Curtain Raiser, as we're now going to use the effect of the Superstar, which will get us Abyss Tainment, activate the Abyss Tainment, which will trigger our Madam, and from here we can special summon Hope, which also gets us level 4s, and we're going to go into Gallant Granite. Now, this is a combo that I didn't showcase in Valance, because I felt it just required too much commitment, and because Abyss actors are a deck that kind of need a little bit more, I felt it was more suiting to use it here. With that being said, this combo is also doable in Valance, as you'll see momentarily. So we're going to use the effect of Gallant Granite, search ourselves a Fossil Dino. We can then go into our Super Producer. The Super Producer will pop the Dramatist here in order to get ourselves a scale. We get the Madam just for a search. You could get whatever you need here, but we'll then use the effect of the Dramatist, putting our Abyss Tainment from the graveyard back to our deck as we now go into Rotten. And this will be how we bring out the Fossil Dino, as we've already used our normal summon this turn. And from here you're going to see the Abyss Grips go to the graveyard off the Superstar effects. During the standby phase you can use the Rotten, which will allow you to target the Gallant Granite, which is the same typing as the Fossil Dino, and we can then special summon the Fossil Dino to the zone it points to. Now this is the final direction with the deck that you can take, and I want to point out that the Master Pendulum is only here because this combo requires you to have a monster in your extra deck. Aside of that, you only need the Curtain Raiser and the Dress Rehearsal. So I'm going to start this combo here by activating the Dress Rehearsal. This will net us a search for the Wild Hope and the Story. Again, a lot of the same things as before, as we're going to use the Curtain Raiser, special summon it. We can then activate the Master Pendulum here, as the point of it is just to get to the extra deck. As stated earlier, normal summon the Hope here, use the effect of the Story as we activate it. Then this will allow us to special summon our Superstar, and then we can pop the Wild Hope, which will net us the search. We'll get the Madame again, and from here we can use the Curtain Raiser, sending the Abyss Tainment, getting back the Wild Hope. We'll then use the Superstar, placing the second copy of Abyss Tainment. We'll then go into Beyond the Pendulum, which will net us a search here, as we're going to get the Dramatist, and place the Wild Hope and the Dramatist into our scales as we're going to Pendulum summon now. And we'll bring out the Superstar, the Madame, along with the Curtain Raiser like before, as we're going to use the Abyss Script, Abyss Tainment, trigger our Madame, giving us the second level 4 here. And now we're going to go into Absolute Dragon, link away into Sprite Elf, and the point of this is to make your boss monsters that you make untargetable. Now we're going to go into Caesar with the 2 Abyss Actor level 4s as their fiends, and then we can make Machinex give us the extra disruption. The reason I also said this combo requires you to have a monster in the extra deck is just for you to have the negation with the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. It actually doesn't require a monster in the extra deck to bring it out. There's no point to do so without a monster in the extra deck, in which that case you may want to go for Appaloosa or something like that. Now I want to show off a 3-card combo. This was originally supposed to be a test hand, but I kind of drew the same regards to the Called by the Grave and having another dead card. The point of it was show how you would play a hand when you don't have Abyss Curtain Raiser, the extra monster, and you don't have Story to special summon something else. So as I said previously, in this case scenario, we have to go into our Link 1, which will automatically lock us as we have to use its effect. We're going to bring out the Superstar with its effect, and we're locked into Abyss Actors from here on. As we bring out the Wild Hope, we'll then go into the Super Producer. The Super Producer will allow us to pop the Wild Hope and place a scale here as we get the Dramatist. We'll then use our effect of Wild Hope, which will net us the Dress Rehearsal for follow-up. Then place the Madame on its scale as we're going to use its effect to search, and this will search us the Curtain Raiser. We'll then be able to Pendulum Summon here, as we're going to bring out basically everything. Use the effect of the Curtain Raiser, which will allow us to get back the Wild Hope to our hand, and also sending the Story. And then from here we're going to use the effect of Superstar, which will the Abyss-tainment, and then we can activate the Abyss-tainment to tribute off the Curtain Raiser, give us back the Abyss Story, and from here the Abyss-tainment goes to the graveyard off of Superstar's effect. We'll then pass on to our opponent, and again what you see here is basically just whatever your opponent does that you want to respond to, and we'll place the field spell off the Super Producer when your opponent activates an effect after we use the Dramatist here. You'll be able to bounce 2 cards as we have the Story set, and I just placed the scale here so that they had 2 cards that we could bounce. It is a return up to 2 cards, meaning that even if they didn't have 2, you could just use 1. For the video, I wanted to get the 2, as we're going to basically Durandal the Wild Hope's effect, forcing them to pop our Story, returning their cards to the hand, picking up this combo. For the last 2 replays, I'm going to be going over best case scenarios, and you see that the fact that we have the Curtain Raiser along with the Dress Rehearsal, plus extra cards this time around, ones that are integral to the combo, so you'll see how they play out now. And we're going to start here by using the Dress Rehearsal as we kind of have to, getting ourselves the Madame and the Story. We'll then be able to activate the Curtain Raiser, special summon it with its effect. Going to normal summon the Wild Hope now, and then use the Story, which will target the Wild Hope, bring out the Superstar, and this will pop the Wild Hope. The Wild Hope will then net us a search here as we get the Dramatist, and from here we can use the Curtain Raiser, sending the Tainment, and then from here we can get back ourselves the Wild Hope, as we're going to link away into Beyond the Pendulum. Beyond the Pendulum nets us a search as we get our Comic Relief, and then from here we're going to place the Wild Hope along with the Comic Relief, I believe, on board. Yeah, so that Dramatist is a level 4 for us, and we're going to pen 5 here. And from here we're going to have 3 level 7s along with 2 level 4s, which is kind of nice. Use the Superstar to ourselves a script. In this case we get the Attainment as we're going to go into our Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, link away into Appaloosa. This is the first of 2 avenues that you can take with this hand, and I'll be doing the second avenue that you can take after. But from here we're going to get our Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, and we'll also be able to make our Machinex, effectively giving us monster negates with the Appaloosa, the Machinex Disruption, the Odd Eyes Vortex effect. Now we'll be going down the second avenue that you can take, starting with the Dress Rehearsal again, as it has the same clause as Extravagance. We have to use it first if we want to use it during our turn. We'll now use the Curtain Raiser as we're going to special summon it, then we can normal summon the Hope again, activate the story. This will net us out the Superstar as we're going to pop the Wild Hope, and this will net us a search here as we're going to get the Dramatist. And when going first, you'll notice that you are going to get Dramatist more. We're going to send the Abyss Tainment with the Curtain Raiser to get ourselves back the Wild Hope. We can then use the Superstar to get ourselves the second Abyss Tainment from our deck as we go into Beyond the Pendulum, and this will net us a search here as we get the Comic Relief. We'll then scales here with the Wild Hope and the Comic Relief, and then we can pen 5 again as we're going to basically spit out our entire hand here as we're going to go into our Odd Eyes Absolute. We can then link away into Dagda as we're going to bring out our Vortex. From here we can activate this Entertainment as we're going to trigger the Dagda, and then on a new chain link we can trigger the Madame, and this will effectively give us another body that's a level 4. And now we're going to go into our Super Producer, rank away into the Caesar, and then go into our Machinex. Size up this board, we have the negation through Vortex, we have a Pendulum Summon monster, so that when we get the field spell via the Super Producer comes live, the Scythe Lock will also be popped via the field spell, and the Machinex, the added layer of disruption. Onto the deck profile, and I'd be lying if I said there was more tinkering I wanted to do. I feel like there's ratios that can be around for more going second cards, like maybe playing just 2 Superstars and 2 of the field spells, be cutting the Dramatist as a whole as well, because I just don't think it's too good. Depending on how relevant its synergy with the field is, could change that. Outside of that, I do like the ratios for everything else. Explain the 3 field spells. My logic is that just a security blanket to if your Super Producer gets disrupted or whatever on your opponent's turn. Just being able to evade it and also potentially be a combo piece. You can reveal an Abyss Actor Pendulum monster and an Abyss Script spell in your hand to add an Abyss Script spell from your deck to your hand with a different name than that revealed spell. Especially important, as in most cases you'll actually be getting your dramatic story to combo off with something like Wild Hope that you may have drawn to pair with the field spell. Also know that more people like to play more of the Abyss Script spell cards, and I wanted to minimize on the bricks here because this does have Scythe here. Along with the fact that Dramatist in this particular build can put your Abyss Scripts back into your deck, to mention Abyss Tainment them back from the graveyard. I feel like the ratios are definitely more dependent on playstyle. You'll see that I'm only playing 2 Super Producer and 2 Hyper Director. This is in order to have extra deck space, because the extra access to something like Nightmare Unicorn or Abyss Dweller, even Underworld Goddess, when you already happen to use a lot of extra deck space for Machinex, along with your Odd Eyes combo. And there is the mint that you could take out the DDD stuff, but I just feel that it's universal disruption too good compared to something like Dweller that's more graveyard specific. Being said, it's perfectly understandable if you do want to run of each. Having Curtain Raiser is integral, being forced to go the 1 card route. Anyways, onto the card by card, you'll see that we have the 3 Madam, the 3 Superstar, the 3 Wild Hope, the Scythe, the 3 extras, the 2 Comic Relief, the 1 Trendy, and this is here just because it's a high scale. This best case scenario, contribute it off to bring out an extras, your hand or face up extra deck. It's very situational. And then we have the 3 Curtain Raiser, the 1 Dramatist, the 3 Dress Rehearsal, the 3 Book of Moon, and I'll be honest, I had no idea what I wanted this to be, especially with a new format coming. Went with Book of Moon just for the unlocking Kashtira is able to do. Then we have the 3 Field Spell, the 1 Called by the Grave, the 3 Story, the 3 Talents, the 2 Abyss Tainment, the 1 Flames, and the 1 Ceremony to wrap up the main deck. Onto the extra deck, we have the Vortex, the Odd Eyes Absolute, the Caesar, the Abyss Dweller, the Machinex, Underworld Goddess, the Appaloosa, Nightmare Unicorn, Dagda, Beyond the Pendulum, Dark, Super Producers, and the 2 Hyper Directors to round out the extra deck. Onto the options, as you saw, we do have the Gallant Granite with the Fossil Dyna and Rotten route, But again, that just depends on if you want to invest that much space along with your combo lines into it. So then have Masquerena and Access Code, which are just two other generic options. Another cute option that you have is Big Eye, is most explosive going second. Big Eye is just another card that can steal an opponent's monster. Lastly, of course, as I was mentioning before, you can bump up these to 3 if you would like to do that. Breakers may also be a positive thing for the deck as you're able to do more disruptions that way. Don't have to deal with the struggle of certain back row decks. Things like Lightning Storm and Harpy's Feather Duster, Tactic being able to search them and whatnot. Definitely something to take note of if you happen to struggle versus those type of matchups. Anyways, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.